Namaste everyone, I'm your co-host Shravani ma'am. Welcome to your favorite learning channel. The topic for today's video is seed dispersal and germination. So we had already learned that the ovules they mature and they mature to give rise to seed. So we can say that a seed is a matured ovule, right? So, a seed is a mature ovule that grows into a new plant when it receives favorable conditions. Okay, so this seed is enclosed or it remains enclosed. We can say that seed is enclosed. Enclosed by what? It is enclosed by a protective layer called seed coat. Okay, so when ovules mature they form seeds when they have unfavorable conditions, and these seeds they are enclosed by a protective layer called seed coat. So seeds also contain, we can say that it also contain, that is the seeds also contain, what do they contain? They have seed leaves. Seed leaves, and these are known as cotyledons. Okay, so cotyledons are seed leaves. So these cotyledons they have stored food in them. So based on the number of cotyledons present in flowering plants, so we can say that plants having single cotyledon, what are they called? They are called monocots. They are known as monocot plants or monocotyledonous plants. We can take example of rice, wheat, etc. These are monocot plants. Okay, then the flowering plants which having two cotyledons, they are known as dicot plants or dicots or dicotyledonous plants. For example, pea, beans, etc. So we know that cotyledons have food stored in them. So based on the number of cotyledons present in flowering plants, they can be differentiated as monocots as well as dicots. Okay, so now in order to be able to grow under favorable conditions, these seeds are needed to scatter over a large area. So now what is seed dispersal then? It is the movement, so the movement, or we can say the transport of what? Of seeds that happens away from the main plant. This process of movement of transport of seeds is known as seed dispersal. Okay, this method is known as seed dispersal. So since plants cannot move, there are many ways for seed dispersal, that is both living as well as non-living things help in dispersion of seeds. Okay, let's see what are these different methods by which seeds get dispersed. So first we will be talking about the water current. Let's see how water current helps in the dispersal of seeds. So this happens in case of aquatic plants. So aquatic plants or those plants which are found near the water bodies. Near the water bodies, they use water. Okay, such plants use water as what? As a medium for dispersal, for their dispersal. Okay, so the seeds actually they float on water and they then reach to different places. We can take example of such plants. For example, this form of seed dispersal can happen in water lily, in coconut, etc. Okay, so this was by the help of water current. Then let's talk about the wind. So how wind helps in seed dispersal. So plants, those plants which have light seed with lightweight seeds, okay? So plants with very light seeds, with very light seeds, they are carried by wind, okay? Such seeds are carried by the help of wind to long distant places. Okay, for example, in case of dandelions, okay, in dandelions their seeds get dispersed by the help of wind because the seeds are very light, so they can be easily carried away by wind. Okay, then we will talk about the next method of seed dispersal that takes place with the help of animals and birds. Okay, so here what happens, animals and birds, they eat fruits, correct? So they eat fruits and the seed and the seed that is present inside the food is released out. Okay, it is released out by excretion. Okay, so after they eat the fruits, the seed that is present within the fruit is released out when they excrete. Okay, so the seed then develops into this seed, then it develops into a new plant, right? So for example, this happens in case of apple seeds, blackberry seeds, etc. Okay, now in some plants what happens, they have adhesive hook on the seeds. Some plants, they have, what do they have? They have adhesive hook which is present on the seed, okay, by which it adheres to the body of animal, by which the seeds, we can say they adhere, that is the seeds adhere to the body of animals, and as animals move from one place to another, the seeds get dispersed. Okay, so this is the way that animals and birds bring about the dispersion of seeds. Okay, next we will talk about the other method of seed dispersal, that is by ballistic method. So what happens here? Here there are some seeds, when they mature, what happens after they are mature, they forcefully explode. So they explode forcefully. Now once the seeds are getting forcefully exploded, what happens, it releases the seeds at a distance from the original plant. So this is how here seed dispersal takes place, and this can be seen in gorse, etc. Okay, so this was about the seed dispersal. Now, as we have seen, the seeds have been dispersed, they need to germinate to develop into new plants, right? So let's see what happens during seed germination. So after the seeds have been dispersed, they need favorable conditions to germinate into new plants. So once the seeds are dispersed, they wait for favorable conditions to grow. Okay. Now what is seed germination? How can you define it? So seed germination is the process of sprouting. Okay. So we can say it is the sprouting of what? Of a seedling. It is the sprouting of a seedling from a seed. This is known as seed germination. So the germinated seeds further turn into a baby plant. Okay. So the first part of the plant that emerges, which is the first part? First part of the plant that emerges from the seed, okay, from the seed. Do you know which part emerges from the seed at the first? So this part is known as radicle. Okay, so radicle is the first part of the plant that emerges from the seed. So what does radicle do? It helps the seedling to adhere to the soil. So what is the function of radicle? It helps the seedling, to adhere to the soil. To adhere to what? To adhere to the soil. Okay, so this is the function that radicle performs. So after radicle, what happens? Plumule develops from the seedling. Plumule develops from the seedling. Okay, so this plumule, it obtains the stored food from the cotyledons, right? We had already studied that cotyledons store food. So this plumule obtains the food from the cotyledons. So there are different conditions that are necessary or that are suitable for seed germination. So conditions required for what? For seed germination. So let's see what are the different conditions required for seed germination. Seed germination requires conditions like water. It requires optimal temperature. Okay, optimal temperature and oxygen. These are the different conditions that are very necessary or very essential for the seeds to germinate into young plants or new baby plants. Okay, so now let's quickly revise the things we have studied today. So today we have talked about the process of seed dispersal and its germination. So we already knew that a seed is a matured ovule that grows into a new plant when it receives favorable conditions. So this seed, it is enclosed by a protective layer called seed coat. It also contains seed leaves, and these are known as cotyledons, and these cotyledons basically they store food. Okay, now based on the number of cotyledons present in a flowering plant, plants can be classified as monocots or dicots. So the flowering plants that have a single cotyledon are called monocotyledonous plants or monocot plants. For example, rice, wheat, etc. Then those plants which have two cotyledons are called dicot plants or dicotyledonous plants. For example, tea, beans, etc. Now, in order to be able to grow under favorable conditions, the seeds are needed to scatter over a large area, right? So, this process of movement or transport of seeds away from the main plant is called seed dispersal, which can take place by the means of living as well as non-living things. Okay. So, first we have talked about the water current and how it helps in dispersion of seed. So, in case of water current, this helps the aquatic plants or the plants which are found near the water bodies. They use water as a medium for dispersal. For example, water lily, coconut, etc. So, the seeds actually float on water and they reach different places. Here we can see the growth of a coconut sapling, right? Here we can see it's coconut sapling and it is growing. Okay. So this is the case of water current that helps aquatic plants or the plants which are found near the water bodies. This water current helps the seeds of such plants to get dispersed. Then we talked about wind. So plants which have very light seeds can be easily carried away by wind to long distances. For example, in case of dandelions, here we can see seed dispersal by wind in case of dandelions. They have very lightweight seeds which can be easily carried away by wind to distant places. Okay. Then we talked about animals and birds. What happens here is the animals and birds, they eat fruits and the seed that is present is released out by them during excretion. So such seeds further develop into new plants. This happens in case of apple seeds, blackberry seeds, etc. Then in some plants, they have adhesive hook on the seeds, and by these adhesive hook they easily are able to get adhered to the body of animals. Okay, so this is how animals and birds help in dispersal of seeds. Then we talked about ballistic method. Here what happens, there are some seeds when they get mature, they are forcefully exploded, and upon their forceful explosion, this releases seeds at distance from the original plant. We can see such type of dispersal in case of gorse, etc. Okay. Now that the seeds have been dispersed, it is time that they get germinated properly and grow into proper healthy plants. So, what is seed germination? Germination is a process of sprouting of a seedling from a seed. Okay, so after they are dispersed, they wait for favorable conditions to grow. So then they sprout from a seed. Okay, this is known as seed germination. So the first part of the plant that emerges from the seed is called radicle. So radicle actually helps the seedling to adhere to the soil. So after the germination of radicle, the plumule develops from the seedling. Okay, so this plumule, it obtains its food from the cotyledons, and there are different conditions that are required or that are necessary for seed germination to take place. These conditions are water, optimal temperature, then oxygen. These are the various critical conditions that are required for proper germination of seeds. So I hope you all would have got some great insights by watching today's video. Please do not forget to like and share the video. Till then, thank you for watching.